Hi everybody. So, let me just get my computer set up properly. Hi everyone. So, today's topic is about histamine, anxiety, and methylation, and the links between those three things. And clinically, I find this really important because we can't forget that when someone has anxiety, whether it's driven from histamine or life circumstance or blood sugar imbalance or low progesterone, it will disturb gut function. And what is going to happen is that this will cause a perpetual issue with histamine, anxiety, malabsorption of nutrients that you need for methylation, and the cycle goes around and around. So by the end of this talk, I really want to reinforce to you how and let you understand what are the key things we're looking for when trying to establish if anxiety is in fact a histamine driven, as I know there are other causes. Okay, so histamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain, and why this is not honed in to us at college is I just can't understand that. I think it was probably in a textbook we read it. Okay, so as a neurotransmitter in the brain, it has some really important roles. It is important for controlling the sleep-wake cycle. So we need to sleep, we need to wake up, obviously. Okay, it is really important for regulating appetite. It helps us control our body temperature, and it is important and assists in the release of serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, and adrenaline. Okay, so this is the normal physiology of histamine in the brain, and obviously it is important for mood regulation and important for the stress response. But with like all things need to be balanced, and when histamine can get too high in the brain, it causes problems. So the mechanism of how this works is that histamine, when too high, is going to overstimulate the H1 and H2 receptors in the brain. And these receptors work on the release of dopamine and noradrenaline. Now, in extreme cases, when this is very high, it can cause panic attacks and paranoia and mania, okay, manic behavior. Okay, and we often, we might be seeing this in clinic, but more often than not, we're going to see a more mild presentation of that, which is anxiety and agitation and sleep disturbance. Okay, so one of the key things I'm looking for when it's a histamine-driven sleep disturbance, amongst also understanding that they've got lots of other histamine symptoms, is these people, potentially they might not be able to get to sleep, but they're often waking during the night, feeling tired but wired. Okay, so I'll ask them, it's like, so I'll say to them, so if you wake up during the middle of the night and you're tired in your body, but God, you wish you could just get up and just get going and do things because you just feel so anxious and wild. Like if you needed to go to the airport, you'd be like, right, I'm up, I'm gonna pack my bags and I'm off. Okay, so at least that can actually give you a task to do to try and deal with all this anxiety. Okay, so tired and wired is a really, really big red flag for high histamine in the brain when people are waking during the night. So if you've got high dopamine and high noradrenaline in the brain, this is stimulating the sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight response. And this is going to increase adrenaline from the adrenal glands, a normal part of physiology, but when it's too high and it's chronic, it will cause a chronic release of adrenaline. And this will cause heart palpitations, high blood pressure, feelings of anxiety and irritation, and it is going to disturb gut function. Okay, and part of why we're going to have high histamine in the brain in the first place is issues with gut. Okay, so it's a chicken and egg cycle that goes around and around and around. Okay, so histamine can build up in the brain from all the causes of high histamine. So having gluten intolerance, or simply just eat, I think especially in Australia, people are very reactive to gluten. Digestive enzyme insufficiency, so hydrochloric acid insufficiency. What's going to cause that? Stress being a major cause of that. SIBO, oxalates, mold are going to all increase histamine in the body. Okay, things like Helicobacter pylori, Crohn's disease, celiac, and ulcerative colitis are all able to increase histamine in the gut, and this can increase histamine in the brain. Okay, now the other thing that will really increase histamine in the brain is estrogen, and that is because the histaminergic neurons contain estrogen receptors. Okay, and I spoke about this in my estrogen histamine live a few weeks ago. So, God is a man. Honestly, I always say that to my patients because women always suffer worse with this stuff. Okay, and if your estrogen is too high, if you're not detoxifying it properly, or even in that perimenopause phase when our estrogen can be 3 to 4 times higher than our progesterone than it was when we were younger, this increase in estrogen is stimulating the release of histamine from these histaminergic neurons. That in turn will stimulate the H1, H2 receptor in the brain and increase the release of dopamine and noradrenaline. And then that will increase the sympathetic nervous system response, the fight and flight response, increase adrenaline from the adrenal glands. So in women, I've just seen this clinically over time. Well, I mean, I first started recognizing it when I first started dealing with histamine, is that women would feel so much calmer when their hormones shifted at ovulation and premenstrually from just getting the histamines down in their gut and their diet. They feel calmer, they don't feel that agitation, they sleep better. And being 47, and I don't have big histamine issues, but I know that at ovulation, mid-cycle, if I consume too many high histamine foods, so for me, that would look like going out for Japanese and having wine and miso soup and teriyaki and soy and just way too much histamine. If I do that at ovulation or premenstrually, I will definitely feel awake during the night and have that feeling of tired but wired. And I know it's histamine because I'll take Toxiprevent and then I'll fall asleep. I've tried taking Neurocalm, St. John's wort, magnesium glycinate, and it doesn't work. It's the binding up the histamine will work. Okay, so clinically, with women in that perimenopause phase, whether they've got pre-existing histamine issues or not, you can actually calm the nervous system down by reducing histamine. So it's a really powerful clinical tool. Guys, if you have any questions, just shoot them through into the comments box. So what else is going to increase histamine in the brain? Neuroinflammation. Okay, so neurodegenerative disease like multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's, obviously, or just brain inflammation. Okay, brain inflammation. Inflammation from the gut can cause inflammation in the brain. It's chronic stress can cause brain inflammation. Alcohol, unfortunately, like this is a big problem because alcohol is going to cause inflammation in the brain. It also is histamine, like you're drinking histamine, and it will slow down the detoxification of estrogen. So, this is why so many women can't drink much alcohol during the perimenopause phase. Like, I know I can't. I can have one wine. If I have more than one wine, I don't sleep properly, and I definitely it will impact my hormones and my mood, definitely. So, main causes of histamine in the brain. Okay, so what we need to remember and understand that histamine in the brain needs to be broken down via the histamine N methyltransferase enzyme, because the DAO enzyme, research suggests it's kind of absent in the central nervous system. So it's the histamine N methyltransferase enzyme that we need to break down histamine in the brain. Carolyn wants to know, can quercetin increase estrogen, although it supports... Carolyn, no, I've never heard of quercetin increasing estrogen. I'm not sure, how would that work? I've never heard about that. Clinically, quercetin, like, it's not amazing. Like, it's just not, I think it can help symptomatically, but it's not, I've never seen it being super powerful for really, it's a band-aid. So we need to get to the issue of why the mast cells are degranulating estrogen. Degranulating histamine. Sorry, my computer just went off. Okay. So back to methylation. Okay, so methylation is what breaks down histamine in the central nervous system. Okay, so we need to be producing SAMe to break histamine down in the brain. Okay, now the other thing that SAMe does is it breaks down estrogen via the COMT enzyme, and it also breaks down dopamine, adrenaline and noradrenaline, also via COMT and by the PNMT enzyme. These are all methyltransferase enzymes, and we'll always need a methyl group or SAMe as the cofactor for that to work. And when you have high histamine in the brain, for the most part, unless you have a neurodegenerative disease, it's different. It's coming from the gut mostly, and its inflammation in the gut is causing malabsorption of the nutrients you need for methylation, in particular B12, folate, and also protein malabsorption, which is your methionine. And we can't forget that the MAT enzyme that converts methionine into SAMe is very sensitive and highly prone to reducing its function due to inflammation, oxidative stress, LPS toxins as well. Okay, so we need to think that if your patients are presenting with high histamine, gut issues, histamine, high estrogen dominance, then the reasons why they have that are most likely causing a malabsorption of the nutrients they need for methylation. Okay, now if the homocysteine is low, then we don't have enough homocysteine to be regenerating around to create methionine and to create SAMe. Okay, so we're going to give some SAMe to just like fix this problem, but unfortunately in most instances it doesn't work. It can make people worse because we're not actually dealing with the root cause. Okay, so how this looks like clinically is that how I will sort of assess patients if I think their anxiety is histamine driven is they will often put anxiety on their form, so I've already got that in the back of my mind. And then when I'm going through their case and asking them about gut issues, if they do have the classic signs of high histamine in the gut, such as reflux and heartburn or loose stools in particular, and if they do have corresponding issues like even slight red skin, itchy skin, they might say I feel a bit itchy after exercise. They might not have full-blown hives, but or I feel very hot after a shower, any sort of issues with skin. Okay, and then any other histamine issues where their anxiety is potentially worse after eating different foods. If they're female, worse at ovulation, worse premenstrually. If they have that waking, tired but wired feeling. If they say, oh God, I can't drink alcohol, it definitely keeps me awake. You obviously question the amount that they're having, but some people will even say 1 wine and I'll be awake all night. And then understanding all the causes of high histamine and linking that all together, okay? Because I understand anxiety can be driven very much from blood sugar imbalances. I see this in young women all the time. They're not eating enough protein, they're stressed at work, they're eating on the run, they're not digesting their food properly, they're not eating enough fats, they're more on a sort of vegan type diet, they've got really, really bad blood sugar regulation. That is a major cause of anxiety. And they're not eating the nutrients they need to make neurotransmitters, their protein, their amino acids, and iron in particular. Okay, so I know that there's other causes, but when people are presenting with all of the other systemic histamine issues as well as anxiety, then you definitely need to be considering or really suspecting that it is a problem with histamine causing their anxiety. Okay, so just, it's the it's the typical fight and flight reaction. So I'll often ask patients like is the histamine, do you feel like anxious in your brain, or do you think it's coming from the body? And I'll say, yes, I feel like I'm just sitting at work and like my heart starts going fast, I feel restless, I feel agitated, irritated in my body, and then my brain will start as well. So it can often be that feeling agitated and irritated in the body, okay? And obviously the other neurological histamine issues, you can like really take note of those. If they also get headaches and migraines, if they also have issues regulating their body temperature, if they have tinnitus, okay, it's a big neurological histamine symptom. And depression. The thing with histamine, obviously when histamine's high, it's part of the inflammatory cascade, and inflammation, neuroinflammation, major cause of depression. Okay, so it's just about understanding that, yes, this patient is a high histamine anxiety case. Okay, so what do we do about correcting this? Okay, firstly, we need to get the histamine down, usually in the body. The thing with just trying to get the histamine down in the brain is that it's, in most cases, guys, it is coming from the body, it's coming from estrogen. Okay, most cases. I know that there's neurodegenerative diseases and other issues, but clinically, mostly you'll see that it's coming from the body. You've got to stop it getting into the brain from the body. Okay, so we go back to all the reasons why we can have high histamine in the first place. Gluten intolerance, digestive enzyme insufficiency, LPS toxins, SIBO, mold, oxalates, etc. Okay, and we're working on getting that down. At the same time, dealing with women's hormones with estrogen clearance and progesterone support can really, really help. In particular, with progesterone, you've got to get the nutrients in that they require for progesterone. So it is zinc, B6, iron, iodine, vitamin D. Vitamin D is really, really important for progesterone. So you make sure you get your patient's levels up to over 100. Okay, and calcium deglucarate to break down. I just find it so efficacious for reducing estrogen. Like, it's really, really powerful. It will really get the estrogen levels down and your progesterone up. That should prevent too much estrogen stimulating too much histamine in the brain. Okay, so when we're working on the body and our hormones, usually the histamine will come down in the brain. And the other thing that we can really, really do at the same time is look at supporting the nutrients for methylation. Okay, so B12 seems to be the thing that just is deficient in so many of our patients because of stress and hydrochloric acid insufficiency. And it's really important to get the B12 levels in. Okay, so I usually use like a sublingual or liposomal form of hydroxycobalamin just to get their levels up first. Awana's got a question. Do you see a lot of joint pain in your patients with histamine issues? Yes, in particular with oxalates, Awana. So oxalates will definitely cause a lot of joint pain. I mean, people with SIBO get a lot of joint pain and fat pain. You know, the thing with that fibromyalgia diagnosis is so often it is coming from SIBO, oxalates and mold, causing widespread body pain, including joint pain. So I wanted the question, if someone's getting joint pain, I always ask that. The questions I ask for oxalates in particular will be joint pain, and then it will be gut pain, sharp pain, and then the bladder issues, urinary frequency, bladder pain. Have they had chronic cystitis, interstitial cystitis? Are they getting vaginal thrush, etc.? That are the red flags for oxalates. Oxalates have, there's every symptom. Oxalates cause every symptom. And they can be really tricky to pick up when people don't have the classic bladder issues and pain issues. But if they've got histamine issues, you need to, and you're not convinced it's just SIBO or gluten or something, then you need to look down that you need to really think about oxalates. Okay, so going back to treatment, we definitely need to getting the hydrochloric acid, so the B12 in, and then guys, it's just hydrochloric acid. This is the thing: when these people have anxiety, it disrupts gut function. It disrupts the production of hydrochloric acid. Okay, so I make sure that I get the histamines down so that it's not creating hydrochloric acid, because when you give hydrochloric acid to someone when it's too high from histamine, it can cause burning. So once I know that's down, definitely go in with hydrochloric acid. I usually use either the Hydrozyme from Orthoplex, or I'll use Pure Encapsulations Digestive Enzymes Ultra with hydrochloric acid, because it's got brush border enzymes and pancreatic enzymes for SIBO. Okay, and definitely you get the hydrochloric acid up, it will start breaking down the food properly. If it doesn't, it just sits, rots and ferments. I'm going to talk about a patient who's got this issue in a minute. Sits, rots and ferments in the gut. Okay, that's going to increase your histamine. Okay, it's going to keep SIBO there, or create SIBO if it's not even there. And it will start breaking down the food you need, the B12 and the methionine, to support methylation. Okay, now if you're interested in MTHFR and you want to understand the methylfolate status of your patient, you need to do a methylation profile, which will test for tetrahydrofolate, which is like the precursor folate to folinic acid in methylfolate, and then you can actually see in real time what is going on with your patient's methylfolate status, not just relying on an MTHFR gene mutation. Okay, so you start working on all the causes of high histamine, get the digestive enzymes up, detoxify estrogen, increase progesterone, and then in most instances, that person's neurological histamines and their anxiety have calmed down significantly. Okay, and clinically, it's essential that we do that, because if you're not calming down the nervous system, you cannot fix the gut. Okay, which is, big part of why people have high histamine in the first place. Also, you can't, there's a massive interplay between anxiety and an issue with hormone imbalance. If we're anxious, we're not making adequate amounts of progesterone. Or in severe cases, the anxiety is going to stop the menstrual cycle altogether, cause anovulatory cycles, okay, and then, or long cycles and short cycles, and this can cause massive issues with hormone imbalance in women and a massive increase in their histamine. And this is for women that might not have any pre-existing histamine issues before, but when their hormones go out of whack, they can surely start getting massive issues with histamine. All right, guys, so I hope that was helpful. I will make sure I post this so that you can all listen to it again. Thanks, guys.